this webisode, we're sitting down and we're talking relationships with Jim and Betty Layton. Jim and Betty have been members of the church for 26 years, and they currently lead the small group for young married couples, among other things. So Jim and Betty, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. How about you tell us how long you guys have been married for, and how you've also met?
Hon, you want to start?
We've been married for 43 years this summer. We met while we were in college, and that was Houghton College. It's a small liberal arts college in Western New York.
Western New York, okay.
And we dated for a number of years.
The reason we dated for a number of years is I didn't know if I should be married.
Okay.
It's not that I didn't love Betty, but that divorce was prevalent in my family. And I had done enough study of marriage to know that people who came from divorced homes often reproduced that. And I didn't want to do that to her or to any children that might come along. So I wasn't sure. And after our college years, I went off to seminary, and Betty taught in a different state. And I came to the conclusion that she was the person I should be with all my life. And that with Christ in our marriage, divorce would never be an option. And I felt at peace with that, and she still said yes even after waiting a while.
You dated, how many years did you date for?
Probably, well,
A little over 3.
3 years, yeah. So Jim, you're an ordained minister. Did you do any marriage counseling? Do you currently do marriage counseling?
Well, when I perform ceremonies, I still do. I was a full-time pastor for 10 years before I developed a communications ministry. During those 10 years of pastoral work, when people would come to me and say, "Will you officiate at our wedding?" I'd say sure, but the precondition was premarital counseling. And that was a time not for me to judge whether they should marry each other, but more going through the possibility of what can happen in marriage and developing some skills so that that marriage could be successful. There were other times when people who were already married would come to me and work out some of the difficulties they might be going through, some bumps in the road, and feeling, and I agreed, that it's better to get counsel from somebody who's not a relative or a friend, but somebody who still cares.
Okay, yeah. Now, Emily and I have been married for 5 years now. It might be a little cliche, but we found communication is one of the most important aspects to a good marriage. You know, so whether we're talking about what we're happy about, what we're maybe upset about, just even, you know, day-to-day plans, that's important. Do you guys agree with that? Or?
Well, anyone who's done any reading on marriage or family life or any of the studies that come out to say what makes a family strong or marriage is strong will definitely say communications is the key. We all have to work at it. We all have to practice it all the time. And when you think, just like you were saying, with maybe not stresses, but even pressures on our relationships, whether it's financial or work schedules or just that day-to-day routine of who's going to take the garbage out.
Yeah, right.
We all need to take some time to just sit down and say what's really on our minds.
And I like to quote from that great theological TV program that you might be familiar with, The Simpsons.
Okay, all right.
Homer, in many episodes, says, "I know, communications, communications, communications." And he's right.
Yeah, okay, all right. The wise words of Homer Simpson. Now, there's no magic formula to a healthy relationship, but any other tips that you can give us? Or?
Well, it helps to be married to your best friend. And you may not start out being best friends. That's something that happens over time, sometimes. And but for me, that certainly has happened. The term used now is soulmate. Having somebody whom you can trust and who trusts you makes for a great marriage. And that's what we have discovered. It doesn't mean that it doesn't take work. We try, for instance, to not only be friends, but to have romance in our marriage too.
Yeah.
That means going on a date with some regularity, and making sure that date, even when children come along, doesn't include them.
All right. Yeah.
Or friends, not double dating,
Yep.
but just being together.
How about, Are you big on surprises at all, or?
Am I big on
Jim is the surprise person.
Yeah, it's the free spirit in me.
I'm the analyzer planner.
Yeah. Well, and I'm more of an extrovert, so surprise comes more natural to me. The biggest surprise, I think, for Betty was when we were going to get gas one day in the summertime, and she hadn't known I secretly packed suitcases for us. And we went to the beach for 3 or 4 days.
Okay, yeah.
But she didn't know it till we were about halfway there. After I pumped gas, we just kept on going, didn't we?
That's right.
You packed all the right things.
Well, I don't know about
forgot a
that.
few things.
No, not all the right things, but enough.
He did okay. Enough for 3 or 4 days.
And for more tips, you can come to our small group.
Yeah,
On Sundays. Yeah.
That's right.
So again, you guys have been members of the church for 26 years. How has a strong church family helped you in your relationship?
I think being with people who share a spiritual commitment is another helpful way that individuals modeled for us that marriage was important, and so that became significant for us. I think too, marriage didn't choose us. We chose each other to love each other and to be married to each other. And we have to keep saying yes to it. So it goes back to the vows that we made initially in our wedding ceremony that said, yes, I do love you and I want to make this commitment for life. And so our church family helps reinforce that.
Yeah.
But it takes us back to where our wedding began.
I mean, for us, it's great having the young couples that are, close to our age, that we are able to hang out and we have similar lifestyles. We can support each other, but it's also that we have the couples who've been married for.
You were
longer.
about to say older.
Older.
That's the word you're looking for.
That we're able to look up to,
Sure.
and
Sure.
yeah. So. Yeah.
And one of the things, it may be a tip, but it goes back to how the church helps. The pastor who married us used several things in his homily, but one he mentioned was from Ephesians, which says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And so part of what we've always tried to do is not to go to bed angry with one another.
With
Something may have happened at breakfast or throughout the day, and we've been able to try to bring some resolution to
We
that.
actually try to get it. We actually tried to get it settled by lunch, but the point is, don't just let something fester. And so don't let the sun go down in your anger from the Ephesians letter has been helpful.
That's great, yeah.
And it's something we share when we work with couples too.
And with our church family, another passage comes from Ecclesiastes, which talks about a cord that's made up of 3 braids. And for Jim and me, that means we made a sacred commitment with our marriage. And so the church supports that because it's not just Jim and Betty, it's also God.
Right.
And that becomes the focus of our relationship that's supported by others who share that same spiritual commitment with us.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you for your words of wisdom. And go to our Facebook page or our church website to see our other webisodes, and see you next time.